Welcome to Performance Talk with your host, Yul Gordon and Chris Costa, where professionals discuss the latest news and developments in the profession and all areas that affect sports performance, strength and conditioning, nutrition, recovery, performance, and much more. Listen now to your host and this week's guest, next on Performance Talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. Of course, I'm Yul Gordon, and at some point in our processes here, we'll get back to having my partner Chris on board, but he's not with us today. He's handling some business, so we're here with John Flagg, and we're going to talk about some stuff and some things. John, introduce yourself and tell the audience what you're doing now.
Oh man, what am I not doing now is probably the best way to start.
There you go.
I started off as an athletic trainer, so I am that by trade. But very shortly after leaving grad school and working through that sort of thing, my general philosophy changed quite a bit in grad school of, okay, taping ankles, doing the rehab stuff is great, but how can I stop this stuff from happening? So my theory went to, well, if I can just make them bigger and badder than everybody else, it's probably going to flip the script on who's getting hurt and who's not. And I kind of took that as a big push within my own profession. I left the clinic because I graduated from grad school and immediately started working at a physical therapy clinic, working at the high schools, and then eventually took over the cash-based portion of the practice there, and then left and started my own business, something that had been a side hustle that had scaled up and to the point where I was like, okay, it's make or break time. Like I'm either going to go and do this dream or I'm going to stay here. And I decided to bet on myself. That's the logo you see behind me, Rebuild Stronger. I coach powerlifters, weightlifters, strongman athletes across the world. We have mom and dads. We have, high school kids trying to make the football team there as well. But we started off specializing in rehab for the strength athlete to get them from the injuries that we know they all kind of accumulate, and then get them to the point where they're outperforming their previous self in competition. So I actually just got back from the Arnold last week. One of my athletes won the Masters Bench Bash. Okay. So we got an Arnold champion. I've got world champions. We got national champions. And like I was saying, we've got, I want to make the football team this year. How can I gain 20 pounds all across the board? So that's where I'm spending most of my time, leading that business and continuing to coach and stay on the ground with that sort of thing. And all that's online. So it's provided a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom that I do enjoy quite a bit. So I can still actually compete myself because I'm still a competitive powerlifter.
Okay, that's outstanding. We got several perspectives here from you. And I remember the first shop I opened when the doors opened, and it was it was one of those things where I was like, okay, well, either I'm going to eat this week or I'm not.
Yep.
So you go to work, but you go to work with an approach in mind of now you're kind of directing the ship. You don't have to take it a direction somebody else wants it to go. You can kind of insert your own philosophy into things and how you do business. With that said, my first question to you is the difference for our audiences, because believe it or not, a lot of them don't know, and while they are professionals, the difference between Olympic lifting, powerlifting, and strongman competition, preparing for that.
Well, preparation is very interesting. I will say, I think if powerlifting and strongman were to take some cues from weightlifting, they'd probably learn a lot. Now, I look at this through the lens of sport all the time. Mm-hmm. And pretty common joke about powerlifting is like, oh, you're trying to excel at the thing that other athletes do to get better at their sport, right? Like it's just brute, raw strength. It is the squat, the bench, the deadlift. It is typically the core of what most competent base strength and conditioning programs are going to be. Strongman is the circus. And I say that with as much respect as possible.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
part of my logo is a stone. So, but it's awkward lifts. It's, it's the theatrics. It's typically, seeing people get put in awkward positions that they can be strong in, which is awesome. And then you have traditional Olympic weightlifting, the snatch and the clean and jerk. But I think what I appreciate, because I started off from a strength coaching standpoint in weightlifting. That's my base. And they treat the sport of moving weights as a sport, not as an activity, not as, something that can't be kind of pieced together. And I always equate some of this stuff to soccer quite a bit. Because and I don't have a soccer background. I'm not a soccer player. You can look at me and tell I'm not a soccer guy.
No, if I seen you running down the soccer field, I'd go back to my old days and try to shake and bake a little bit. I'm not running into that.
And I'd fall flat over too. So that wouldn't matter. But you never really see, and this is any sport, right? Like the practice isn't full game scrimmage all the time. It's not full field. It's not 11 on 11 in football. It's not 5 on 5 in basketball. We don't do that as practice. So weightlifting has done a really good job of saying, okay, we're going to hit our main lifts and then we're going to break those lifts apart. We're going to pull from blocks. We're going to pull from here. We're going to pull from different positions.
Okay.
And that's where I look at powerlifting currently and really wish they would kind of come around to treating it more like a sport where you do break the squat apart a little bit. You do break the bench apart a little bit. You break the deadlift apart a little bit. You're not always doing the competition lift because Strongman does a really good job of that just because things are always weird.
Yeah.
You may have the implement you compete with, you may not. But it's the usage of variation, constraint of tasks, of really looking at it from a motor learning standpoint and a sport aspect that weightlifting has got right. And, those are, I think, the biggest differences. Weightlifting, they treat it like a sport. Powerlifting, they only do game day stuff, which is tough. And then Strongman is just, it's fun. It's fun.
Those are, uniquely different perspectives. I've always said to, folks that have come in and had either from a high school coach or someplace outside of training with me who've had an Olympic lifting or weightlifting background, and they've asked the question, well, why don't you like weightlifting? I said, hold on, that's not a true statement. I do like it. I said, but we have to make it appropriate. We have to make things appropriate for your sport. So we're gonna do things that look and feel like weightlifting, but we're gonna do it from a little different angle with a little different purpose because your purpose is not the snatch.
Yeah.
So to start, like you said, start treating powerlifting because we have those implemented in our approach as well. But start treating all those things, like what they are.
Exactly.
And apply it to the sport that you're, trying to train for. One of the big differences I've always seen is Strongman because man, them dudes move some stuff around.
Dude,
And
it's wild.
I related to being back home like I told one of our other guests, I grew up in rural America. And I was always good in the weight room. I could move stuff around in the weight room. But when we went out to the farms and we worked with the hay bales and moving implements around and fence post and all that kind of stuff, I was like, man, this is killing me over here. And
it's a different effort.
Yeah, I said, and this guy over here, he's just he's getting it done. And I look at that person, I'm like, and at the time, I was pretty jacked and this guy was kind of just, he was bigger, but he wasn't, never seen him in the weight room, but he was strong as a bull ox, man.
Yep. And all the conditioning too. Like the motor is huge.
Yeah, exactly. So for me to see men that strong, that big, have that kind of gas tank, it's like a 550 with a double extended, extended range gas tank. I'm like, dude, you're still doing this?
Yep. And smiling.
Yeah.
And happy about it.
And I'm so, okay. But anyway, enough of my foray into the past. So you got into, let me back up and remember. So it was athletic training, then into the business world and your own weight training or your own training. I'll just say it like that. So you're competing as what right now?
I'm a competitive powerlifter currently. Yeah, I my first foray into competitive lifting was weightlifting. And I'll be honest with you, the 3 hour long training sessions and stuff like that, I made my last big push before my first daughter was born. And I was like, okay, I got my best total right before that. And that's when I said, okay, I got to make life simpler. So I started powerlifting, and I found it just to be more conducive to my lifestyle, and found a lot of success there as well. So that's what I personally compete at.
What was the switch like?
Honestly,
I know that weightlifting is you have to break it down so far because it is treated like a sport. So I know the time factor, but what was the other differences?
I approached it the same way.
Okay.
Having been within the strength world for so long, working with my athletes, being in the athletic training room, kind of always being that guy that I was the AT that always gravitated towards the strength coaches. Like I was the guy that's like, hey, let's hang out, let's chat, let's talk about what you're doing in the weight room. You talk about what I'm doing here, and try to make that relationship really strong. So when I switched from weightlifting to powerlifting, I approached them the exact same. I looked at it and I said, okay, I'm going to watch my squat. Where's it breaking down? Okay, how can I take the principles I learned from weightlifting and transition that over into my squat to make my squat better? That doesn't mean just squat all the time. Maybe that meant I had to squat a little bit differently, or put a different variation on, or try something differently. So I approached it the same way, with the biggest thing just being the simplicity of things. Right. The nice part about powerlifting is you have a lot more makes. Like you shouldn't really miss a lot of lifts in powerlifting. Weightlifting, though, it's really common. Like you could have the goal of coming in and hitting 6 lifts, and you might hit 2. It's just not how it works. You're getting all your reps in powerlifting, which the frustration level, I think the mental aspect was a lot easier for me. So I could go in, get the workout in, get out, know I got the stimulus I needed, and be really happy with that. But then from there, it was the same mental approach. I'm going to go to the gym. This is my time to focus on me. This is that time, analyze, break down, see what I need to do, and then see what the result ends up being. So I've kind of approached it the same way, even though it's a simpler sport. I say that in quotations.
Okay. Now your programs, what you do as a business, you said you do primarily online. Is it the same approach? Did you take your personal approach and apply it to that?
Oh, 100%. I want to look at, every movement my athlete is doing. I want to take a real fine tooth comb, look at that. And I look at 2 things. Number one, I look at what is the quality of movement looking like? Like where is their performance? All the tangible things that you see in an athlete. Second, and I think this is a really important piece, that if there's coaches out there listening to this, if there's other professionals out there listening to this, this is the thing, right? Ask them how it felt. Like, talk to them.
Big man,
because
again.
Talk to them, because the variables I can see are one thing, but how they're experiencing it, what they feel like they can improve on, what they feel like their strengths are. I'm not going to be, it's like, I'm not perfect. I can't, you got to build that relationship. And
one of the subjects that comes up at me, especially when we're doing something like a hang clean, because what we do is what we call the 5 lifts, which include a push press, a hang clean, a shrug, an RDL, and I can't remember what the fifth one is, but we do them every day, so I should remember. But I'm old, so excuse me. But anyway, the point was our focus is ask the athlete and questions about how they felt, because you can't tell with your eyeball how much they're pushing into the floor, or if they feel even. Sometimes if it's a gross motor issue, you can see, they're pushing more with one side than the other. But most times you can't tell that. So you have to ask them, hey, how did it feel? Hey, did you feel like you were leaning to your right or left? Were you back on your heels? It Because there's those things you're not going to see. And then it's like you said, when you're talking to them like that, you're developing that relationship.
Well, and it goes beyond some of those things, because that's like all my stuff is online. So there tends to be a little bit of a lag when it comes to some of these things. But even asking like, hey, you looked off on Tuesday. Is everything all right? Like, is everything cool? Because you can look at training in a vacuum very easily and say, well, 65% should look like this, or, 80% should look like this, or we're in the middle of a peak, 90% should look like this. That's great. But what if they didn't sleep last night? What if they decided to go to a concert last night? What if their girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with them? There's so many different external factors. I have an athlete. She's a defense attorney down in Texas. The people she has to defend, she didn't get to choose who she defends. Right. Some of the cases, I'll just get a message before a training block, and she'll be like, all right, look, this is what's going on in court. And we just reset expectations. We've been working together for like 4 years. So we're past all the normal, like, get to know each other stuff. Yeah. But at this point, it's like, okay, we know we're going to have late nights. We're going to have nights where sleep gets tanked. We're going to have nights where it's going to get hard to get into the gym. We know those things. So then we can make the adjustments, and I can look at her training and be like, oh, this is what's going on right now. And if you build that relationship, the individual different stuff starts to actually make a bigger impact, because you're able to bob and weave with it a lot more effectively than just writing a program and not honestly taking the scientific method to it and seeing, okay, what data am I getting back from this? Because it's not just the program, it's the human that you got to take into account.
And that, my friend, is a unique skill set. I'm telling you, everybody can't do that. And many people with online training programs do not take that into account. I mean, it's just a program stuck up on a screen, and the only expectation is that you flip the screen. You understand?
Yeah, but I mean, AI can do that now.
Yeah.
ChatGPT can put a program up there for me. I don't need that.
Exactly.
Like, I want to know these people. And the best part is like, when I mentioned going to the Arnold, she brought a bunch of friends. They all know me. Like that whole crew knows me. I've had people who are like, they know my family. They know they are friends as athletes, because we worked together for 5, 6, 7 years. So, you got to develop those relationships, because a program only goes so far.
Yeah.
It only goes so far.
As a professional, you jumped into the online arena. I'm sure you still do some stuff, either as a side gig if you have time for that, and those kind of things live. But what made you jump into the online, besides the fact that you guys are, and I'm guessing, again, I always say this, I said this to our last guest, you are probably closer to my daughter's age than mine. So what made you decide, okay, I'm going to do this online?
For me, it ended up being necessity.
Okay.
I was working. So you're right. I had like the side hustle gig for a long time. I was working in the clinic doing all of our performance stuff, alongside physical therapists and stuff like that. I had my own side of the clinic. I had all that kind of stuff, but I was still, doing some of the strength coaching stuff over at a local gym.
Okay.
And I had this one weightlifter, man. She was awesome. She was great. She was another athletic trainer on top of that. And I mean, you guys know how this stuff works. Strength coaches, athletic trainers, doesn't matter. Like they'll shake up in a contract. Next thing you know, that whole staff is laid off, you know, and she's looking for a job and they're saying, oh, we'll pay you part-time. And that sucks.
Yeah.
Especially sucks as ATs and strength coaches. So she just decided like, okay, I want to restart my life. I'm going to move down to Texas and I'm going to become a state trooper but I still want you to coach me. At the same time, my little brother, who if you actually saw him, you'd be like, there's no way these two guys are related outside of the way that we talk. I'd coached him my entire life, right? Like when I graduated high school, I immediately started coaching wrestling. My wrestling coach brought me back and my brother was on that team. So like I've coached my brother forever. He's a competitive strongman athlete. And he was like, hey, I'm going to Amherst. Like, how are we going to make this work? So I was like, all right, well, I got to figure out this online thing. And I got to tell you, it was messy at first. It was sloppy. Like I look back on it. It's one of those things where you should actually look back on these sorts of things and laugh a little bit. But I was using Google Sheets. I was using Zoom to like screen share their videos and then upload them to YouTube and then send them a link. Like it was taking me forever to do this stuff, but I loved it. And that's really what pushed it that direction. Then I got hooked up with a CrossFit girl down in North Carolina. She found me through a mutual friend and people just started to knock on the door and
just kept riding away.
Yeah, I just kept riding it. And the really interesting part, because I told you guys before I came onto the show that I lived in the DC metro area for like 12 years, a very large portion of my roster was from that area. They're local. And it was still fully online type stuff, especially post-pandemic.
Okay, yeah.
You know, everybody went, especially powerlifters. Man, Rogue, Titan, all those companies that sell like home gym equipment just crushed powerlifting. Everybody had their own little gyms now. I was actually really worried when I moved away from Maryland that I'd lose them all. And I still have 95% of those clients on the roster, even though I moved down here to North Carolina. So it was a huge, I was in Southern Maryland. So I was in La Plata, just south of Waldorf.
Okay.
So, but the online switch was a necessity. And then I found that I, was really good at it, but then B, I really enjoyed it. It allowed me a lot of freedom. And I still do a lot of in-person stuff. I'm affiliated with a company called Clinical Athlete. I have a coaching course on how to coach clinicians, on managing powerlifting injuries and how to coach powerlifting. So I do a lot of in-person events for that. And then I've been a competitive lifter for 20 years, like going to somebody's gym and just getting a training session in with a bunch of people. Like I love doing that sort of thing. So between those sorts of things, I'm still doing stuff in person and keeping the skills sharp. So
that used to be a big thing for me back in the day when I was, in the gym more often than not. That's where you'd find me. But the fun part was going into somebody else's gym, seeing how they did things, going through their stuff, and almost 100% of the time I took something away from that I could use either myself or in my work with other people. So yeah, I definitely feel you on that.
I can say this, man. I think everybody should be doing continuing education all the time. You should be a lifelong learner. You should 100% do all that kind of stuff. But I have learned more just sitting with people at a gym and lifting than any course I've ever taken. Just go ahead.
No, I've been at this, man, closer to 40 years than 30. But one of the things that I tell folks that are in my, age bracket that are still in the game is, hey man, don't just, I say, go work out with some of these younger guys. Go work out and see what they're doing. I said, because, we can sit up here on this experience hill on high. Say, oh, yeah, I've been doing it for 35 years and, I know what works. Well, maybe you do, but for me, it's always been, and that's what kind of started this podcast, almost 9 years ago, was talking to guys like yourself, and hearing what you were thinking. Because, some of it was reimagined stuff that we did, but now you have more. You have more data, so the application was a little different, and but a lot of it was just you guys come up with some unique ways to do stuff and program stuff, and I'm like, okay, all right.
Oh, wasn't it? I don't want to misquote. It wasn't it Charles Poliquin that used to always say that the gym is 10 years ahead of research.
Yeah.
And I always scratched my head on that one because I was like, 10 years seems like a lot. It seems like a whole lot, but the gap is getting tighter and tighter and tighter, because I know we can talk about how critical we can be of certain aspects of research, and like we could go all the way down that rabbit hole, but the gym bros are actually starting to do the research now. Like the people in the gym, the people are going and getting degrees. They're going, and we're tightening that gap.
I was going to say they're more intelligent, so they're asking the questions that put researchers. I don't want to say puts them on the spot as an academic myself. You got to have some serious chops because you're getting asked questions that are legitimate. It's not just, well, it worked for me. They'll ask you a question that you go, okay, well, where'd you get your master's degree? I don't have one. Well, where'd you do your undergrad? I didn't. How do you know this stuff? Well, I read. Well, what do you read?
Meatheads.
Yeah. Well, what do you read? And I'm not afraid to talk to these guys and ask them these questions because I come from the world. That's what I did prior to doing my educational part of it. So I was late to the academic world, but not to the gym, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, the aspect that can't be ignored is social media. There's so much more contact. There's so much more information being shared. If we were to just look back at powerlifting very specifically, now West Side gets a bad rap for a bunch of different reasons, but imagine if that gym, if Louis Simmons had actually had access to all of the connectivity that we have now. I mean, you're talking NFL strength coaches, college strength coaches, the number of people that went to that gym just to be like, hey, can I pick your brain a little bit, was massive. And not all that information even percolated all the way out to everyone.
No.
And that's just one gym. Like there's multiple gyms that were also highly influential. They were doing really cutting edge stuff that maybe went out of business, and those secrets are lost. Right. But now, people are picking them up, and because of the connectivity of social media and how fast information can move, good and bad information, by the way.
Yeah.
Then we can start to get this, and other people are going to start asking questions like, okay, Sam Sulik is jacked. Like that kid is just out of his mind jacked. But people are starting to ask questions about the way he's training and looking at some of the older concepts that he uses that now we look at as like long-term eccentric load and all these other things for hypertrophy. And it's like, okay, Arnold really, really had some things right.
Yeah.
But we can also look at that from a modern approach and say, okay, so how do we cross-check this now? How do we look at some of these things, time and retention? And you look at, BFR research that's been out there, and we never really thought about, when it came to eccentric load, the metabolic damage that's done and how that impacts hypertrophy. On top of all those things, okay, you mentioned, athletes before and the way athletes train. I wanted to mention this before, but we look at joint angles and the ability to create power now, and we look at velocity-based training. Yeah, we look at all those pieces, and I remember there was that viral video from a couple years ago of LeBron doing like quarter squats, and all the powerlifters were just out of their mind. They're like, what is this guy doing? This is so terrible. And I'm like, first off, last I checked, he hawks down everybody in the NBA, and he's got the patented that layup's mine. Sorry, get out of here. And he's making a lot more money squatting like that than you are. And
so let's see what he's doing.
Yeah. And maybe there's something to a basketball player, a sprinter, a jumper, a track athlete doing some of these very high power, short range of motion things, because that's within their range of motion and power band.
Right.
So like, let's look at those pieces and research those pieces and not think, well, it's not full range of motion, so it's a no-go.
Yeah. If you look at the sports, most times most explosive movements aren't full range of motion. You know, and I say most, and when I say most, I mean over 85%. If somebody's rebounding off the floor, you're not seeing a full range of motion jump right there. So how they produce force and you know, their reaction time off the floor is all critical to or let me say that differently, is important because we learn how they get up, you know, how they produce those quick reactions and those times and all those things. So
Exactly. And I mean, you brought weightlifting up previously. If I was to coach an athlete that wants to play football, I don't really have a need for them to pull off the ground.
Yeah.
I'm going to put them in a hang position because the hang position is the power position. It's literally called the power position in weightlifting.
Yeah.
That's where you jump from. That's where you throw from. That's where you run from. It's all that same kind of positioning. So
we call it the base position.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn how to get in that base with no weight when you're starting a sprint from a standstill. Just, you know, that's the position you start from. So that's the position you train in, so to speak.
Yep.
Everything starts from there. Wow, man, I'm trying to figure out which direction I want to go next. Yeah.
So many different places.
Oh yeah. So what's you know, we know, you know, what you like to do and where you started. Now you told us that. What are some of the things you learned later on, like, you know, 15 years into it, you said, man, I really like this. How do I incorporate this into my programming or whatever?
So I'm going to give you a tangible and I'm going to give you an intangible.
Okay.
So the tangible thing, right, that I learned that I was like, oh man, like this, I really wish I would learn this when I was younger. I really wish I would learn and like train this way, when I was younger. And this is going to sound kind of crazy. My body isn't as sensitive as I thought it was. So what I mean by that, right, is a lot of people will look at a program and they'll say, well, you know, I can't deviate from that. I can't change from that. And there's two ends to that coin. You come in, you feel like crap. Maybe you're a college athlete. You've got all these exams coming up. You've got all these external stressors. You just feel terrible. So then you go in like that. All of that is stress. It doesn't matter. All of it's stress. So you come in and you come to the gym and everything feels heavy, but then you push into those, miss lifts, fail lifts. I see it most often, in the bench press and obviously weightlifting.
Right.
But it's like, everything feels heavy, but it says on the sheet 80%. So I've got to go to 80% or everything is screwed. Right. But I won't get the results. I won't get this. I won't get that. It's actually one of the reasons why I think RPE based training coupled with percentage based training is so effective for people.
Okay.
But you come in and you overreach. You sit there and you like push, and you don't ever understand why you can't recover well when you're super stressed out. The other thing, and this is very specifically for my own powerlifting and the athletes that I coach, if you feel great and things are flying and they feel super light, like go a little bit heavier. Go
more, yeah, get some more.
Give yourself that little push, right? Know when the gas and the brakes on the car need to be operated.
Okay.
Don't think the program is so rigid that if you don't follow it, it's not going to, it's something's going to explode. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned that I incorporate with my athletes now, which allows them on many, many levels to make way smarter decisions. They're just smarter athletes at the end of the day when they train that way, because now we can auto-regulate and do it in a way that we're not talking just about like RPEs and these sorts of things, but we're making smart training decisions. And I tell them it will all equal out in the end, because it's not 6 weeks from now. It's a year from now. It's 2 years from now. It's 3 years from now. You don't get good at anything unless you do it for 10 years.
Yeah. That's just the bottom line. I had a young man in last night, and he said, dang, coach, I'm feeling good. He said, I think I'm gonna get all the reps today. I said, well, why don't we push it up a little bit if you feel good? And he ended up PRing on a 3-rep deadlift. He's a high school kid, so he did what, 25 or whatever it was. But he's 210 pounds.
Yeah.
And he was quick off the floor. It looked sharp, you know what I mean? And he dropped it, and he was like, wow. He said, I wouldn't have even went up that high. I'd have just done what was programmed, if you weren't in here to tell me to do it. I said, you got to know when, like you said, I didn't use the exact terminology. I said, you got to know when you can challenge yourself a little bit, and effort is everything. Don't put the weight on and then under anticipate the amount of effort it's going to take. Don't just pull on it and think, oh, that's too heavy. Give it a real shot. You've seen guys do that.
I've it's 100 times.
They load the bar up. Let's just use the bench press, for example. They've successfully, this is in my body weight range, but you've successfully done 315, and then now you want to attempt 335, but you don't put the same effort or more effort into getting the next level you moved up. And so, wow, I didn't have to push that hard. That felt heavier than 315. Well, it was.
Yeah.
It was, but that means you weren't ready if you weren't ready to, put the same effort in moving the bar.
Yeah, intent is going to always matter.
Intent.
I don't care if it's 135 or 405.
Yeah.
Like, you still treat the heavy stuff like it's light and the light stuff like it's heavy.
There you go.
Is one of those old mottos, like, you always have and train with intent. But the intangible piece that I think is really important to kind of share here is, and I love that story you brought up with that kid, because I guarantee you the next time he walked into the gym, his chest was a little taller, the smile on his face was a little bit bigger. I guarantee when he put that bar down, he stood up and he looked at you and he was like,
yeah, he was looking. You hit it right on the button. He was like, hey, like,
he's looking around like, wait a sec.
Did anybody notice that? Was that me? Yeah.
Anybody get that? Because I got to put it on TikTok. Anybody feeling that? Anybody? Where's my filming crew?
Exactly.
But the intangible thing for me, and I tell people quite a bit when they first meet me, like, I am the crazy person. I get that, because I love going to the gym. I think about it when I'm working. I think about it when I'm on the way there. I think about it when I go to bed at night. I think about it all the time. But I think about it because I love it. And if there's a single thing that I try to do for people, and the intangible piece that I wish I had learned earlier, is that it should be fun. It should be fun. And the more fun that it could be, the better off and the longer term people can be in there. It shouldn't be a chore. And honestly, if you are an athlete and you're sitting in the parking lot, not into put all this built up anticipation just to work up, to dry scoop pre-workout just to get in there, to all this kind of stuff, that's a yellow flag at minimum to me. We need to find a way to make it sustainable and fun. And a lot of the times that does mean shaking stuff up a little bit. It does mean going in and making those smart decisions, because that kid is going to have another day down the road where that 425 is a single.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he can either choose to implode, or he can choose to shrug it off and say, all right, that was still a pretty good session. What's next?
Yeah.
And just keep going.
I call it finding the joy.
The joy. You have to have it.
Yeah. In the preparation, because none of this is easy. If weightlifting was easy, everybody'd be doing it. And I say that in the general sense of, moving around and doing resistance training. If it was simple, everybody would do it,
Mhm.
but it's not. And there's days you go in there and psychologically it's just a high mountain to climb. But if you remember that you love this stuff, this is what you do, you love this stuff, and you love it because it helps you perform, you love it because of the way you feel or whatever it is, you love it. If you just remember that, even if it's not your best day, you can get through a workout successfully and positively, more important.
Yep. And that's one of the exercises I like to do with a lot of my athletes is really discovering why. Like having a why and like a tangible mission really helps build that love for it and that joy for it, because then it gives them, and it's more than just, I want to lose weight. I want to gain weight to make the football team. I want to XYZ. Typically there's something deeper there, and understanding, hey, why do you want to do this? And ask yourself not once, not twice, but 3 times. Why? 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 And you'll be surprised the answer you actually come to, but that can be a big driving force. And
how it goes from simple to complex.
oh, very much so.
You start to realize when you say, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing it? You start to
Yep.
realize, you know what? There's a whole lot of reasons I do this, and most of them are positive. And that's when you start to become self-aware and at least in your training, and that's progress, man. And we're talking about some psychological pieces here, so let's just delve into that a little bit. In your work online, in your work with people and your experience, um how often do you work with other professionals, psychologists, nutritionists, PTs? I know you work with PTs a lot because you're an athletic trainer. So
All the time.
yeah.
All the time. So I will say I'm blessed having some of the positions that I've had. I actually coach a lot of physical therapists as lifters. So, and other coaches, I do that quite a bit. So there's a lot of intermingling there, but I have a roster of mental health professionals that I'll refer people out to. Quite a bit, especially if we're talking about very specific dietary needs. I have a small subset of my team that are type 1 diabetics. So I have a very particular registered dietitian that if they need extra assistance, we can work through that. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to. And I'll be the first person to punt as fast as humanly possible when it's like that's because here's the thing that I've realized too. Not having the answers and trying to find them myself, I don't enjoy. So if I can't know everything, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I'm really good at. This is what I love to do. If I try to deviate from that, I take my own energy away and I can't serve my people the best way possible. So I might as well kick that over to somebody who loves that other stuff.
One of the proudest points about your generation of strength coaches, athletic trainers, weightlifters, whatever, is that your willingness to work together to come to. That's not always been the case in this profession or in the professions around it. There was a lot of I used to call it hoarding clients. So man, why are you hoarding all those clients? You're not helping him or you're not helping her if you're not in your wheelhouse. If it's if you're outside your lane, let somebody help you. That
Yep.
that was always me, and I got looked at like I was strange a lot of times. Man, we don't want to give up a client. That hurts the bottom line. I'm like, you're not giving up a client. You're helping them out. They're more than likely to stay with you and come back to you or whatever the case may be. But you guys seem to intuitively, and when I say you guys, it's your generation seems to intuitively understand that, hey, if we work together, we can get this one kid here and he can be successful.
Well, and yes, I 100% agree. And I've got a real tangible example of this. I have a really good friend of mine. She's a physical therapist and also runs an online strength company working with powerlifters. one of her very qualified lifters, Canadian lifter up north, super, super strong, decided like, hey, so there's raw powerlifting and there's equipped powerlifting. Raw is just belt, knee sleeves, wrist wraps, a singlet, the basic stuff. Equipped lifting is using single ply equipment. It's assistive equipment. It is a different animal. That's one of the things that I coach really well. Okay. So when her athlete decided, okay, I've done a lot with the raw powerlifting, I want to go and experiment with equipped. The first thing she did is call me. Hey, I got an athlete. She wants to do X, Y, Z. I said, all right, cool. It's not a problem. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. 2 back-to-back national championships later, right? That's and she's looking back, and the thing that people don't understand is because she did the right thing by her athlete, that athlete still refers people to her for raw powerlifting and for the things that she did for her. And then I get the referrals for the equipped stuff because that's where I'm the sharper knife.
Yeah, that's where she came in to your purview as that. While you could probably do the other, she feels compelled to, hey, for raw, go here, for fits, go here. But she's comfortable doing that because of her experiences of being referred to someone that was qualified.
Yep. And I'll say this for myself. I've always had a coach. I have a coach that coaches me. There's more than just hoarding clients to do the best by them. I do think it's really important to refer them to people who have a better personality fit, have a better coaching fit, have a style fit, all those things, because if I'm banging heads with somebody because we just don't fit personally, it's not going to serve them as an athlete. I don't care how good my programming is, how good my feedback is, how good all that stuff is. If we just don't like each other, which is a reality, okay?
Yeah, a real reality.
It is a reality. I find I'm a big, scary, tattooed guy, but I'm a teddy bear. Like, I take a different approach than some other people. Some people don't like that. They don't jive with it. They want a harder edge, or they want, more hardcore type coaching, or they need a little bit more support. That's fine. Find them the right people. They will thrive.
I have evolved over my time, but I started off, really intense, and that's the way I coached, really intense. Well, some people couldn't deal with, that expectation, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
While I was also very supportive and very communicative, but it was the intensity that they didn't like. And as I've gotten older, I've softened a little bit. But one of the big things was I'll just give you an example. I had a parent that didn't think I was coaching their son hard enough. Like you said, you're not coaching him hard enough because he's still not doing this. I said, well, based on what we've learned from him, that's not the best approach. He goes into a box and closes the lid, when you coach him hard. He needs just a little bit of understanding. We weren't soft. I wouldn't say we went soft on him, but we let him know, hey, look, great effort, great this, great that. Try it this way next time. See what we come up with.
Mm-hmm.
It was down from, hey, you got to work harder. That was a horrible effort. But that was my evolution, as opposed to making the kid change into something or coaching him away. He wasn't responding.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, this is an important piece. I'm sure you've read Brett Bartholomew's book,
yeah.
Conscious Coaching.
Yeah.
There is a tactical technique piece to being a coach, identifying certain individuals' needs, their personalities, the way they operate, especially in a team setting. Like you have a locker room to kind of like manage that. Like you gotta bob and weave with those sorts of things. Yeah. But I think where people have taken it too far in a lot of cases is they just whitewash their own personality away, and they act like they're some sort of chameleon. Like, no, these are all techniques. If you get, it's my favorite one from that book. If you get the Wolverine, right? Like you get that psychographic. There's a particular technique and approach for that athlete, but I'm not going to change me. I'm going to use a technique to get through to that athlete, but I'm not going to change myself. Like I have to be consistent. I have to be the rock. I have to be the grounding force for everybody because I'm the coach. So if all of a sudden I'm different for everybody, that it's not going to be conducive to progress. I just have to know when to employ certain techniques to communicate effectively with each athlete. And I think that's where we evolve, right? Like that evolution you're talking about, you just learned more techniques and you were like, I have more solutions for this now. Yeah. Okay, great. This is awesome.
Treating everyone equally is not always the same as treating them the same.
Yeah, that is a heavy hitter right there, dude.
Yeah.
Big time.
I'm going to treat you, everybody in the building equally. But I can't treat everybody the same because, just like you don't have the exact same programming as the next guy. Or I've but done most of my work in private settings or as a contractor, in organizations for short periods of time. So I wasn't ever really employed by one organization or another. I used to roam around as more of a problem solver than, in the gym and conditioning and stuff like that, as opposed to staying in one location. One of my big things was if you walk into a building and you try to treat everybody the same, you're going to lose 85% of the people.
Yeah.
If you treat everybody equal, you're going to get 95%. You're never going to get 100% of them. So trying to get 100% and being fixated on that is, it's a dream. It's not a reality. But the great programs that I've seen out there usually are somewhere between 85 and 90% successful as far as the group goes. And then there's all types of other programs that are somewhere in between. But if you're trying to treat everybody equally, you're on the right track. But you just understand you're never going to treat them the same.
Nope.
It's just,
and that
go ahead.
That goes for all of it. That goes for the way you treat them. It goes for the way you program them. It goes for the way, like that's where all of these individual differences start to stack up. And it's a small factor if you look at like the global scale of things, but it's a differentiating factor. And it is the thing that, I mean, if you treat everybody equally and understanding that is going to create different strategies for each individual or at least subsets of people, then you can navigate those things well and get everybody directionally correct. Because like you said, 80 to 90% all heading in the right direction. Okay. One of two things is going to happen. That 10 to 20%, some people are going to just fall off to the wayside, or they're going to get sucked up into the vortex and they're going to go with you. So you might as well get them all going in one direction. And this is proven across the military. It's proven across sports teams. I mean, you look at
it's even proven across, and I don't dip into that area very much. That's not what we do here. But it's even proven across business organizations.
100%.
100%. You don't treat the boss doesn't treat his best worker exactly like he treats the guy that just shows up, does his job, is a great person, but he just shows up and he's out the door on time. You get treated equally, but different. Well, why didn't you ask me to do X, or give me the opportunity to do that? Well, you leave every day at 5. Ain't no problem with that. You do good work. I have no problem with that. But you don't put off the air of wanting to do extra work or stay longer. So we're not going to ask you to do something, if you don't want to do it.
I mean, there's a reason extraordinary leaders from sports teams and the military end up being business consultants. Like it works across it's all people management. It's all how to get people together, directionally correct, and moving in the same direction. So, Jocko, all the names that, Pat Riley for a while there before he came back to being a GM and team owner, all those guys. And who's the last one? Grover, the mindset coach for Kobe and Jordan and Dwayne Wade. Like that guy, he's got a massive business consulting business now where it's all mindset and team management. So those things are all, it's principles, and it does apply across all fields. It's humanity. It's how you work with people.
So here's, as we man, this time is going by way too fast on this one. But check it out, right? If I saw you in the gym, I wouldn't call you an author, but you've got your pen to paper in some books a few times, and that's outstanding, man. Tell us about about your latest book and when it's coming out, or if it's out, and where we can get it.
So you can currently pre-order it on Amazon. So I'll give you guys the link to put in the show notes. But the publisher is Human Kinetics, which is a very large CEU and education company for strength and conditioning, physical therapy, and that sort of thing. Absolutely blessed that they reached out to me and asked me to write this book. But to keep it really simple, the book's called Foundations of Strength. And I really wanted to try to solve two orders of problems here, and for really two select groups of people. Who this thing is for absolute beginners in the gym when it comes to barbell training. I want this to be the guide that lowers the barrier of entry for people to walk into the gym and start to do that thing. Because I know how easy it is. You walk into a gym, first off, it's scary. Right. Okay. I was that kid, and I still, it doesn't matter. Like, I can walk into any gym in the country and people are going to turn around and be like, who's that guy? I still get nervous. You know what I mean? It's new environment, it's a new place. I know how easy it is to walk over to the treadmill and just press the start button because they got presets. Everything's preset. You hit go and it just goes. It's super easy to operate.
Yeah.
The strength equipment, it's not like that. A barbell is not like that. So the barrier for entry for a lot of people is like, I don't even know where to start. And it's not just how to squat, how to bench, how to deadlift, how to overhead press. It's like, where do I set the bar up?
Yeah. What bar should I be using? Are there different weighted bars that,
Exactly.
That's your question.
How do I set these hooks up? How high should it be if I want to squat? Like how should I set the bench up? So I'll go over the absolute basics of every piece of it. So it's the four main movements: squat, bench press, deadlift, and overhead press. And we go into detail into all of those little nuances. Like, you walk in the gym, this is what to expect. These are the different kinds of squat racks there are. This is the different kind of barbells there are. These are the different kinds of belts. This is the kind of equipment, but also walk them through step by step, all the little nuances of the setup for the squat, the descent to the squat, what it looks like to be at the bottom of the squat, step by step through each movement. And then also variations of the movement so that you can develop that. So
I like that.
I put all those together for the absolute beginners, but then also for anybody that wants to coach these people through this sort of progression. Because a lot of the times that's kind of the missed spot. You go to gyms, you have a lot of personal trainers there, you have a lot of coaches there, high school coaches, even college coaches. They would prefer somebody come in that has a little bit of experience. You can get the ground, like you can shoot right off Jump Street into some of the stuff and have that foundation.
Build
because
that foundational level, yeah.
Exactly. Because it's difficult sometimes because it's known to you. Your known stuff, you oversimplify. And this is literally the peanut butter jelly instructions on how to do that. Now, to clarify, a lot of people are like, what are peanut butter and jelly instructions? If I ask you to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, how do you make a sandwich? And most people, because everybody knows how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, they say you take two pieces of bread, peanut butter on one side, jelly on the other, and you put it together. First thing you got to do is get the bread out. You got to take the little twisty tie off the bread. You got to open the bread. You got to get a knife out. You got to get a plate out. You got to decide if you're going to be one of those people that uses a spoon for the jelly, or if you actually use a knife for both. What are you going to do? So it's broken down to also instruct people. And then also a lot of people, well, this squat looks this way. What do I do? Well, here's the variations to help correct that movement. Because this goes back to what we talked about really early. Like, your brain is a predictive thing.
Right.
It likes to predict what it has to do. Just doing the squat over and over and over again isn't going to actually teach you the technique necessary to excel at the squat. So here's a couple other options to break it down and learn the lessons that are necessary. So if you have an athlete who's pitching forward or their butt comes up really early, here's the exercise to select to help with that issue, as opposed to just, oh my gosh, we got to come in and you got to try to squat again, and it's going to look bad. Maybe we should just get rid of the squat.
Yeah.
But why? Like, learn it.
Teach them how to squat. Correct.
Yep. So
Good.
So that's really who it's for. And then I'm trying to solve two problems here. The first one, like I said, is the entry point. It's how do I teach these things and how do I do these things? I think a lot of books have done that. Starting Strength has done that. There's a lot of foundations of strength and conditioning books that have done that. But I'm trying to also solve that second tier problem that a lot of people they don't really recognize, which is, okay, what after that? What if I struggle? How do I constrain tasks? That's what I'm trying to teach people constraints. How do I modify and change these things on my own? And then I've got an entire programming section that isn't, these are the programs that I like to use on people. It's, let me walk you through step by step, like an old choose your own adventure book, to make your own program based off what you're seeing and what you want, how often you can train, those sorts of things. So they go through and they make decisions, and that creates their program for them. So I want to solve that next order problem, which is, okay, I've started. Now what? How do I make better decisions? How do I train more effectively? How do I select the right exercises for me? So that next mystery is kind of solved for them. Because a lot of people will start, we've seen New Year's resolutions come and go, right? It is that time of year where the gym cancellations start coming in.
Yeah. This book is a welcome addition to all those how-to books, but I also think it's an instructional piece, if you want to look at it like that, for young coaches to be able to walk someone through these things.
Yes.
So while I'm not young anymore, I'm still going to beg for a book.
We'll send you one.
I'm still gonna beg for a book, and I'm not ashamed, because like I told you before, you guys, in your generation, I call myself proud to be in the profession still, because I see what's behind me and what you're doing, and you're really trying to solve problems as opposed to just jump in this thing and make money or do what I call strip the profession down. I see real professionals coming through. Look, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope we can do this again in the future.
Absolutely. Anytime.
I am familiar with the East Coast and where you are in that area. I get out there from time to time. So if I think I'm going to have time and you're close, I might want to come and see you if you're around.
Dude, bring it on. We'll get a training session and we'll have some fun.
Just so we can look around a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, we will have to let you go now, but it's been a pleasure, and I thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Performance Talk. We've been with John Flagg. I know you enjoyed this one, so we're out.